It's rare for a piece of media to be completely lost, especially when it comes to video games. But over time, some games have disappeared. Some were never finished, some were stopped because of legal issues, and others were considered too violent or disturbing to release and were eventually lost. Many were simply forgotten because few people cared about them or thought they were worth saving. In this video, we're going to take a look at some bizarre, creepy, and disturbing lost video games. Some are unfortunate to be gone, while others are so problematic that they probably deserve to stay lost forever. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Lolita Slave Doll. This one is a bit of a mystery. I found someone discussing it while searching for games for this video, and apparently this one has been entirely wiped off the internet. I managed to find the original creepypasta, which the game was allegedly based on. There's barely any information about the game, so knowing the story it was built off of would be useful. That way, you can gain some insight into its content. I managed to find a video of a man talking about it, which was uploaded almost a whole decade ago. He summarized it pretty well, but I was also hunting for the original source. I wanted full insight, not just a little information that's being passed around through somebody's words, since we as people can sometimes get something wrong or miss something completely. Now, I want to point out, while I did find a lot of websites claiming they have the original story on them, I ended up finding rewrites and bits and pieces of the original story only. So, my hunt began. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was only available in Spanish, since I found a lot of Spanish websites, posts, and videos, but unfortunately I don't understand the language, and I didn't want to fumble it by Google translating every text I found, so I didn't try to. Thankfully, I remembered that the Internet Archive exists, so I didn't have to dig around for long. I found a picture of the story from March 24th, 2011, basically a copy of the original. I read the whole story, and it is not light. The story is about a sadistic surgeon who lives in an impoverished area. He has money, and he has connections that easily link him to orphanages where he manages to buy underage girls. The girls are usually around 9 to 10 years old, and he chooses them based on which one he considers the most pleasing eye candy. Ugh. Once a young girl is delivered to his villa, he'll begin the process of turning her into a doll. The whole story is sick, and the way it's written had me speechless for a moment. He'd commit the most dehumanizing acts he could, and keep in mind that he's a surgeon, so yeah. After reading them, I went back to the post made on September 3rd, 2025 to see if there's anything more I can find. Apparently, the user managed to find the blog post for the game, but it was a pre-alpha. The user also says that it had download links that were down and probably had viruses. Now, I also would like to add, the same user claims that he or she spent hours trying to find more information on the game, and that the creator's name was Jugador Mark, who was a Spanish guy, I guess. And this user also stated that his socials were all taken down. Now, I did a ton of digging around the internet on my own, and I didn't even manage to find what this user did. Like, there's genuinely nothing. I tried switching my region through a VPN for more results, but alas, I found nothing. Due to the lack of evidence, take what this user says with a grain of salt. I can't verify anything. This literally is lost media. Looking back to the creepypasta though, why would anyone even think of making a game based on it? With how cruel the whole story was and how disgusting the acts that were committed in it are, I can't help but wonder what state the developer was in. Even if it was in its beginning stages, that doesn't excuse the fact that the whole concept was evil. Xenophobia. Xenophobia is a sequel to a rather infamous game called Demonophobia. Xenophobia had 2 demos for it published, one in 2008 and then another a year later. After the second demo was published, there was no more news about the game, and everything went silent. Now, if you've played Demonophobia, then you know how gory it is. If you don't, then no problem, because I'll tell you a bit. Demonophobia gained a ton of attention among horror enthusiasts. The game had a lack of guidance and would make it quite easy to get killed. If you got killed, then you'd be forced to restart the level. The gist of the storyline was that a girl who didn't believe in the supernatural decided to test it out, so she started a ritual. Unfortunately, the ritual worked, and she was sucked into another world. Basically, one like hell. Sakari, the character, wakes up in a dungeon, and she has to deal with monsters. So this is where the game gets gory. Literally the first death scene in the game is the least violent one, and all other death scenes are more cruel and grotesque. The first game was just, one bloody adventure. Now that you know a little bit about Demonophobia, let's move back to Xenophobia. There's a video of one of the demos still up on YouTube, and just like the first game, the second one looks just as interesting. The controls of this one were allegedly going to be better than the ones in Demonophobia, and you could save your progress at certain points. The game also included sound, which was a great improvement, since you could be alerted to the presence of monsters. I think the best part of the second game is that your character can finally kill monsters and fight back. Fighting back wasn't really an option in Demonophobia. However, the game was left without a word and cancelled after the second demo. There may be some pirated links to the demo, but the game is mainly just a sad, mournful idea of what it could have been. There's also some theories floating around as to why it was abruptly cancelled and left behind. The most popular one is that Xenophobia would have been too much work since it looked like a massive improvement of Demonophobia, and the creator just lost motivation due to the underwhelming reception it got at the time. While I was doing my research, I stumbled upon a video online that claims that the creator of the game has made a return after more than 10 years and leaked some unreleased footage from Xenophobia. He also published another game called Dystonasia, which I haven't checked out yet. The creator's name used to be 237, but then he changed it to Window Frame. He apparently appeared on some Japanese websites. If you have any information, please share it in the comments. I would love to know more. Rape Day. Rape Day was yet another controversial game which allowed players to kill and essay women. It had its release cancelled on Steam after thousands of people signed online petitions where they were calling for it to be banned. Continuing my streak of telling you about disturbing games, which for some reason have an awful lot of violence against women, Rape Day is actually an indie visual novel, which, for once, isn't developed by Illusion. The visual novel was planned for release in 2019 before the cancellation, and the story revolved around a serial killer and a zombie apocalypse. The killer, who would be the player, would harass women, among other things. The game was also originally going to have a scene involving a baby, but the developers were worried about being labeled as child exploiters, so they removed it. Also, the game had a big warning for mature content. There were screenshots of the game that showed some very disturbing scenes. A lot was going on. As I mentioned earlier, there were many petitions created against the game. People were not willing to support something that promotes essay against women, and they were not happy with the scene involving a baby. Even if the scene was removed, no one was having it. There were over 100,000 signatures to have this game stopped. This game was also even brought to the attention of members from both the British and Scottish parliaments. Everyone was outraged at how something like this even made it to development, and eventually, word got to Steam, so they backed away and announced that they would not be distributing the game. Game of Death. Game of Death is a cancelled survival horror game that was in development for PlayStation 2, PC, and Xbox thanks to Burns Entertainment. According to some articles, it would have been similar to Shadow Man. Players would take the role of a dying man, and their goal would be to kill the most notorious and evil serial killers. A really cool piece of lore about this cancelled game is that the movie Necromantic's director, Jörg Buchardt, actually worked on it. He was the one who created the concept and the characters. If you don't know what Necromantic is, it's a really disturbing movie. I talked about it in the last video, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. And well, if you've watched Schramm and remember that messed up movie, then you know this game was going to be good, since Jörg Buchardt was the director for that too. Now, about the game. The game's protagonist is a young man who's sent to the hospital after a horrible car accident. Doctors are trying to save him. Meanwhile, he's getting strange visions about how he has to get rid of every serial killer. So what do I mean by that? Well, he has to use the serial killers to kill people in various ways. Now, the catch of the game would be that our character, aka us, would have to maintain our innocence and only kill the boss monsters, who would be the killers during a certain time. Players would have been able to read through the case files for those serial killers to find out clues and weaknesses to exploit. More than 40 maniac bosses were planned for the game, which is insane. Unfortunately, despite how violent, creative, and interesting the plot of the game is, Game of Death could not find a publisher. Due to how graphic it was going to be, many avoided it, hence how it ended up getting shelved and forgotten. In the end, the game was cancelled. Cold War. Artur Laskowski is a Polish indie game developer. He's infamous for making horror games which are bad, in the sense that he includes real content. Cold War was a game he released sometime during 2018. It was on itch.io, and in the game, you'd play as a police officer who was investigating a serial killer. Now, while you're a cop who's investigating, a few minutes in, you hear a really disturbing audio. Out of respect for the victim, I'm not going to mention her name or include the horrific audio in this video. There were allegedly 2 versions of the game. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the original is Cold War, and then there's Cold War Evacuation, which was like an updated version of the original. The update had some new modes, like a zombie mode, but I feel like at this point, we don't really care about that. I've told you about the premise of the game and its controversial detail, so now I'm going to tell you why it's gone. The game was removed from the internet after it was revealed that Artur Laskowski used a real audio recording of a woman calling 911 after being SA'd. Yes, it's a clip of a woman who was pleading with her attacker, a man who'd broken into her house, and the whole thing is just horrific. I cannot comprehend how he decided to include that into his game. That's just vile, and I can't even begin to describe how heartbreaking the audio is. As for the game, I can barely find anything left of it, and it won't be missed. I hope all footage of it disappears and is wiped off the internet. Joy Pony. Joy Pony was a game that you could easily access and play during the 2010s. Today, Joy Pony is still available for download on some websites, but it crashes and stops running after some time, or the app just doesn't start at all. The game was actually deleted, but it got pirated and re-uploaded across multiple sketchy platforms. Joy Pony was based on My Little Pony, and in it, you could customize your very own pony by choosing what color it would be, or you could just select Twilight Sparkle or another pony. In this game, you start by getting your own cute little pony to take care of. It looks sweet and harmless at first. You can feed your pony, wash it, play with it, and earn coins, called bits, to buy things it needs. It really just feels like a normal pet game at the beginning. But that's until you start exploring the other options. Along with normal items like food, medicine, and soap, there's also disturbing ones, like a knife and hooves you can use to hit the pony. If you try to, the game lets you hurt your pony, and it reacts in a really realistic and upsetting way. When the pony gets hurt, it cries, screams, and even begs you to stop. The sounds are eerily human, heavy breathing, whimpering, crying, and it just feels way too real. That's what makes Joy Pony so creepy. It tricks you into thinking it's a fun pet game, but it turns out to be a dark and disturbing one. Many people who played it as kids had no idea what they were getting into until it was too late. Even though the game is basically gone now and barely works anymore, some people still remember it because of how unsettling it was. Baby Shaker. Baby Shaker is a discontinued game. It was available on the App Store for Apple in 2009 and was developed by Sociolatron, which is allegedly operated by a single operator named Alex Talbot. Oddly enough, Baby Shaker was sold for like $1, so it was easily accessible for everyone. How someone from Apple approved this game is beyond me. Considering how its whole concept is its name, Apple obviously faced a significant amount of backlash over it, and they were accused of promoting violence against babies. Due to the widespread backlash, they were quick to take the app down and get rid of it forever. Now, the game itself is pretty much the title. In it, you had to quiet a baby, which was a simple illustration, and to do so, you had 2 options. You could either shush the baby by gently shaking your phone to imitate a rocking motion, or you could aggressively shake your phone, which would result in you putting the baby to sleep forever. If you did that, X's would appear on its eyes. Today, there's only old gameplay of this game left. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Uncut. Let me start this off by clearing some things up. In this part of the video, I'm talking about the uncut version of I Have No Mouth. The uncut version is the lost one, which is not available. Meanwhile, the cut version is the one that is still up and running. The cut version of this game is already disturbing enough, and if you're curious about it, then go ahead and look it up. However, I'm not going to cover that. I'm going to cover what was lost. Some disturbing scenes of the game were played on TV. Meanwhile, they were not available in the game. I managed to find a video uploaded over 12 years ago that shows us the deleted scenes. There was a British show during the mid to late 1990s that did a gore special episode where they showcased gory and disturbing moments from games. One part of the show revealed these deleted scenes from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. This is how it is believed that some of the things that happen in the plot might have been changed. Let me tell you about two of those scenes. One shows a malnourished and neglected dog, while another scene shows us the shadow of a man and a baby. I can't tell you what was happening there. These scenes did not appear in the finished product, and the man in the baby part was probably Benny. Now, even if you just Google this, you'll find a quote on the wiki which states that this was removed later on in development. I think it's quite interesting how the TV show ended up revealing all of this deleted footage, and at the same time, I can understand why it was removed. The Death of Rose. The Death of Rose was going to be a psychological horror game made in third person for PC. The game's story revolves around a man named Scott and his friend Beth. Scott is exploring an allegedly abandoned school building where a cult used to be, and the whole point of the game is to give players a spooky thrill while setting up different levels of horror and puzzles for them to solve. There would have been different kinds of scenarios and dialogue, so each player could have a different experience while playing the same game. The game was also being developed by Artur Lachowski, who we might all recognize as the same developer who used real audio of a woman being essayed. Getting back on topic, in the trailer, Beth is talking to Scott through a walkie-talkie. Scott explores an abandoned school rumored to be used by a cult. The game has interactive dialogue, and it's allegedly inspired by Silent Hill, yet not much is disclosed. As the trailer says, it's all too cryptic and we really don't want to spoil too much or something along those lines. It looked really cool and eerie, but sadly there's not much out there about it. While exploring the buildings, Scott faces many mentally challenging events as he explores the remains of the alleged cult in the building, and realizes it's more real than he thought. The horror affects his psyche, and that's about all we know. We don't get insight into how disturbing it really is, we're just left to speculate. Now, this game was cancelled and scrapped. According to a Reddit user, the developer said he might redesign it, but that was it, and there haven't been any updates ever since. Developer Artur Lachowski has found himself in a ton of controversy though, so I'm not surprised. The Cell. Less focused on being creepy and more focused on being bizarre, The Cell was a game where your character only spoke backwards. The plot was simple. You had to find items, then use the items you found to progress further in the game and be able to escape your cell. Your character would be stuck in a gloomy building and occasionally get phone calls. When getting a phone call, if you picked up, you'd hear a very deep and distorted voice on the other end. The voice would give little hints or something of the like, and just say things like, "You're getting closer to freedom." I think the sound effects are what really gave you the creeps, along with the surroundings. The whole thing just felt eerie, and some corridors even looked run down and bloodstained. Sadly, this game is gone. I can't find it anywhere. It was a Flash game, so it probably disappeared 5 years ago when the Flash player stopped working, just like many other games. The only traces of this game that were left behind are some videos, like a walkthrough, which was uploaded 16 years ago. And that marks this game as a lost one. Ultimate Prank Game. Ultimate Prank Game was a jump scare game, or, well, a screamer game, which only had a promised release. There was nothing but a video of it, which was uploaded onto YouTube many years ago. At some point, the video was made private, but it was later changed to unlisted. There's no download available, and there are no updates for it, as far as I know. The game would be about opening up a file stored on the computer, and that would open up a red maze. In that red maze, there was a glowing rock as a checkpoint, and the first 2 levels would operate normally without anything odd happening. You'd just be passing through the maze like any other ordinary maze game. Just before the 3rd level can be finished though, there will be a picture of a hooded boy with fangs and scars, maybe a vampire? It kind of looked like one, so I'm assuming it was. Anyway, when this popped up, there would be a scream to spook you. So yeah, getting jump scared after a ton of silence was basically it. The video was uploaded almost 18 years ago, so there's not really anything else for it. The game didn't make it to release, and it has since been forgotten, hence making this a piece of lost media. Wet Corpse. Wet Corpse was an action horror game, or survival horror, meant for the Sega Saturn, which was a video game console manufactured by Sega. Go figure. It was also going to be released for Windows. Developed by Vic Tokai, rumors about it say that it would have been a competitor to Resident Evil. Unfortunately, the project was cancelled during the mid to late 1990s. There's not much information on the game anymore either. There used to be preview shots for it in magazines, but that's about it. Some users online claimed that it resembled the Resident Evil style, and it just had a badass name. The premise of the game would be that the player started dead? I guess the player was dead, and it was said to be a bloody game. The last discussion about this game was on a forum during the 2000s, so it's sadly lost. The game was also pending a rating, so whether it would have been considered 18 plus due to violence remains a mystery, but probably likely. Considering its name and how it was mentioned to be bloody, it likely would have included one hell of a story. NH3. NH3 was an indie game in the works. There are barely any traces of it left, as it was a two-man project, and basically all data left about it has been erased. I couldn't find any information about the developers either. I only found one site that was kind enough to link the trailer to the game. Now, in the description of the video, the uploader says he or she canceled it since the engine they were both using was too basic and too poor. The uploader also mentions how the game was outdated, so maybe it was one of the two developers. Now, I beg to differ. The game looked creepy as hell. The atmosphere was dark and gloomy, and in my opinion, had a lot of potential. In the video for the game, we are seeing things from a first-person POV. We're in a creepy maze-like dungeon, and there's also a dead body somewhere. We're getting attacked by somewhat zombie-looking creatures. Maybe there's some different kind of monsters, but whatever. The sound effects are cool, and this is pretty badass for an indie game project that was made over 12 years ago. There's also this big distorted flash at the end of the video, and that makes me even more curious about the game and what its storyline would have been. Now, due to it being scrapped, this game is lost. Hotel 626. Asylum 626, also known as Hotel 626, was a horror flash game that is gone because the flash player stopped. Or, well, no, it was removed from the internet. It's possible that some sites tried to pirate it, but the ones that I found don't work. They glitch and they just can't start up. Plus, I think it was officially removed from the internet during the early 2010s. For a browser game, this one was very scary. You can watch a clip of it from over 16 years ago, and you'll understand why. There's also still some gameplay videos available on YouTube. The game would be in a first-person point of view. The player would be dropped in a haunted hotel, and for every single floor, every level would consist of trying to survive murderers, ghost killers, and other shadowy creatures. And the game was an advertisement. I'll let you try and guess what it was advertising. Doritos. It was advertising Doritos. Imagine getting jump scared after having to use your webcam and microphone, all of this for the new black pepper and barbecue flavors. The fact that it was only available for a limited time sure created quite the intrigue surrounding it. When people know something's limited, you draw attention and gain quite an audience. But there was also this annoying satanic baby in the game which I'd like to mention. This game's officially a piece of lost media. Jacks of Evil. Jacks of Evil was a dark fantasy action game. It got some hype before it was cancelled. The game was set in a dystopian-like cursed world where you'd play as a character trying to fight through hordes of monsters. Every minute would be spent trying not to die while you uncover the lore. To understand the game better, I'm just going to read you what one of the developers said about it. You're working in a secret organization, opposite Dark Forces. Its name is Jacks of Evil. People in this organization call each other hunters. Killing creatures of dark forces, such as demons, vampires, zombies, etc., is the usual work of hunters. You are a professional hunter. Your name is Alexei Gromov. Once you, our hero, are sent to Shanta City in Siberia. It seemed to be usual work, but something went wrong. The game had a pretty good premise, and you could control different kinds of jacks, which were monster creatures or whatever entities they were. You'd use them to tackle different challenges so that you could advance further. The combat was supposed to be fast and brutal, mixing in a bunch of monsters, and the game was going to have a heavy emphasis on exploration and lore. But despite its cool concept, the project faced a lot of problems. There were budget issues, development troubles, and shifting priorities from the studio. After some attempts, the devs pulled the plug, and Jacks of Evil was never released. It's one of those games that's kind of stuck in the whole what could have been territory, hence why it's lost media now. Oh, and it's forgotten for the most part too, which is quite unfortunate. It had a nice, creepy setting. Ben.exe. Just like Sally.exe, Ben.exe is a game based on a creepypasta. Ben.exe was posted by an unknown user, and we don't know who created it. The game is based on the Ben Drowned creepypasta, and it gained a few hundred downloads from users who were curious about it just a few days after its release. GameJolt, the platform onto which it was uploaded, caught wind of this and removed the game due to it violating their terms of service. A little about the game. After you open the application, it opens a message which says you shouldn't have done that. The game continues to lock your mouse and change the screen into Ben standing as still as a statue while background music plays. and the song has been identified as the reversed version of Song of Healing, which is quite weird because it's dubbed as a Song of Unhealing. After a few seconds of this, in classic Screamer fashion, the game's screen suddenly changes and spooks you with an image of Ben's deformed face, accompanied by a classic loud noise to hurt your eardrums. And if you think it ends at just giving you a jump scare, then I have another surprise for you. The application has an unused folder that contains a photo of a child who has been harmed. The image probably had to appear with the loud sound and laughter, but it most likely failed and had a bug, so it didn't and wasn't added to the jump scare scene. Why would somebody make something like this? You have a lot of deranged people online, and the developer of this thing remains a mystery. Similar to Sad Satan though, aside from just the jump scare, it tried to scare you with a shock factor of involving real content, which in this case was a child. Today, all that's left of this application is attempted remakes and some articles on Screamer sites. The original isn't really available. Sexy Suntan. Sexy Suntan was a game posted by Liquid Generation during the 2000s. Liquid Generation was an online entertainment website. They'd post various genres of content: animations, quizzes, videos, and flash games. Some of Liquid Generation's most notable content was its now deleted Sabotage Screamers. Liquid Generation would make a series of pranks which they would disguise as flash games. They would then post them, and the pranks fooled people at first sight, but then turned into screamers, made to embarrass, humiliate, and spook. The whole website for Liquid Generation is down. There's a YouTube channel online that contains some videos about Liquid Generation, but they're officially lost media since we don't even know how many games they had. Anyway, one of Liquid Generation's lost media games is Sexy Suntan, which is a sabotage screamer. There are still some videos of it available on YouTube, but the game itself is rather simple. In the game, you'd rub lotion onto a girl's back for some time. After rubbing her back for a while, a shark would burst out of her back and scream, while a text which says, "You have been sabotaged," and the words, "sabotage," pop up. When will you die? On the topic of Liquid Generation and their weird stream of flash screamer games and other things, When Will You Die is another one of their sabotage screamers. The game is quite simple, and it starts by showing you a quiz that will seemingly show you how much time you have left to live and when you will die. The quiz asks you easy questions, inquiring about your weight, age, height, and more. After these questions are answered, it shows you a box that generates your type of death. Although it gives you the same answer every single time and says you would die of a heart attack. Then there's another box, which is the same as the first in appearance, and this box allegedly tells you the time during which you will die. After making you wait for a couple of seconds with quiet music, a scream and a pop-up of a bloodied man will appear, together with a "You will die today" text. Once the loud sound gives you a scare and causes your heart to skip a beat, another text together with a pop-up appears saying, "Just kidding," and then there's a button offering to tell you the real day of your death. If the first scare wasn't spooky enough for you and you click on the button to get your new death day, then you get a newly generated pop-up saying you will die now, and to spook you, you get to see a disgusting scene from the horror movie Brain Dead. The scene specifically is the one where Vera is overfilled with embalming fluid, and they're screaming again to spook you. So after showing you that gross scene specifically and making you want to bleach your eyes, the game says you've been sabotaged. Although Liquid Generation's website is down, attempts to pirate this game have been made. There are some gameplay videos available on YouTube. Sociolatron. Sociolatron was an adult RPG, MMORPG game, and it's now lost because the owner of the game passed away, and he was the only one who kept it up and running. Once he was gone, the game was left with him. You can't make a new character, and you can't access the servers. The game had a fantasy setting, and it took place in a world after an ill-conceived biochemical attack ruined some providing sources, and cities fell apart. Due to the attack on the resources, there was a war, and yeah, you get the gist of it. Everything was available in the game. You could do anything. Although it was just a game that was heavily pixelated, you could quite literally become a hooker, for example, or you could hire a hooker, and then you could also kill her. The game had no limits and let you have the freedom to have the ability to do anything you wanted. Honestly, there was a ton going on in the game, even if it looked low quality. And it even had an uncensored chat with no moderation, and a lack of moderation can lead to abuse. I also want to point out that this game had SA elements. Touching on this more, I did find an article which claimed that there allegedly was some level of moderation, but as we can all expect from a game which literally allows SA, it wasn't that much. Although I guess they at least tried to get rid of some disturbing users. Carnival Cult. Carnival was a 1998 arcade light gun shooter game that was developed and published by Midway Games. The premise of the game follows a teenager who fights gruesome creatures throughout a haunted carnival, which is divided into 4 levels. While initially lighter in tone, the game was later revamped to accommodate darker humor and gore. Upon release, the game got a lot of praise for its design and visuals, but it was never released for home consoles or PC due to how graphic and violent it was. Basically, just like I mentioned a while ago, the premise of the game was about a teenager who had to fight gruesome creatures. There's the 4 levels I mentioned, where you have to fight off evil clowns, sideshow freaks, and so forth. Your objective was to survive and escape a haunted carnival in which you were trapped in. The story is genuinely not deep, and the focus here revolves more around the thrill of how chaotic it can get. I genuinely had no clue why this had gotten a lot of attention, but apparently a bunch of threads were made on 4chan which made this blow up, kind of how Polybius did. There were rumors about how the developers of the game were some extreme right-wing pagan cult, they were stockpiling weapons or something, and it's mostly a bunch of baseless rumors if I'm being honest. There were apparently Sailor Moon references in the code, which I think is kind of funny, and there's also a rumor that the game contained a photoshopped image of the killer, Jeffrey Dahmer. Anyway, what I've managed to conclude is that the original game has nothing to do with the creepypasta that has been floating around. The game has also been pirated and a lot of its code has been messed with, so it's hard to decipher whether the code really was the original one or if it was a replica that has already been tampered with, but it most likely was. Considering how much people like to take things and blow them out of proportion, I'm more inclined to believe that someone messed with it. That's it for this though. There is no legitimate proof of a cult. All of those discussions mainly consisted of theories without any real proof, hence why this remains a piece of lost media with a lot of misinformation surrounding it. I think the biggest piece of misinformation about the game is just how it's listed as a light gun game. Vile, Exumed. Vile Exumed is a game that was apparently planned for release on Steam, but was then banned from Steam due to its misogynistic content and violence. Now, the game isn't entirely lost. It's still available on some sites online, so if you know anything about it, please share what you know. Personally, I don't want to download the file for it because it looks really sketchy and I'm trying to avoid getting a virus, and I already got one making this video. Now, based on what I managed to find about the game covers topics of assault, abuse, and so on. It tackles the topic of misogyny, and it allegedly uses practical effects to create images as horrifying as the themes. There are a lot of intense visuals in it, and there is no uncensored nudity. Allow me to tell you about the gameplay. You search through a computer during the 90s, trying to uncover secrets that only get darker and darker. There isn't really any navigation to guide you throughout the game. Whoever owns the PC is hiding something, and a ton of files that you have to unlock are locked. Now, the owner of the PC is a porn addict. You discover his search history, and this opens a whole rabbit hole. The creepy dude whose PC we're on is obsessed with an adult star who stopped making content. Around the midpoint of the game, you sort of unlock a mini-game, and you get a creepy video appear on screen while a screaming woman can be heard in the background. After the video plays, the camera glitches weirdly, and you sort of have to look around. But then you get attacked by the ghost of a woman. Oh, and the porn addict who owns the PC is named Sean. It's honestly crazy how we get to read through his email and find out he stalked someone and has a criminal record. We also find out that one of his exes accused him of assault. This is too good to become lost media. It's honestly sad to see how restricted it has become after its fall off of Steam. So, while this isn't entirely lost, it has really fallen off the shelf and doesn't have a big audience. Continuing, Sean has an obsession with horror and gore, and how we get to discover this is wild. As I say this, I'm genuinely considering the risk of getting a virus because this is one of those games which doesn't romanticize abuse or portray it in an exploitative way like Flea does. Robert Steinhauser, Doomwad. Doom is a first-person shooter game, and there are actually a few more since it has a franchise. Basically, as you may know, the player takes on the role of a space marine and starts fighting through hordes of undead zombies and humans, as well as demons. The game begins on Mars and finishes in Hell, with the player going through each level to find, fight, and defeat its boss. Doom WAD is the default format of files for the video game. It contains all the things like sprites, levels, and game data. According to Wiki, WAD stands for Where's All the Data. With this in mind, you now know that players could create their own mods for WAD files or packages. They could basically create a whole new game using this. The 19-year-old school shooter, Robert Steinhauser, played Doom. Further explaining his egregious title, he was the shooter behind the Erfurt massacre in 2002. He's the one who killed 17 people, himself included. Now, Robert Steinhauser made a Doom WOD. Rumor has it that Cannibal Wolf recorded a playthrough, and although Cannibal Wolf's channel is gone, I did find an archive with some of his gameplay. One of the videos is titled Doom 2, Robert Steinhauser's map. The whole thing is just a shooter game, and yeah, it's no longer available. That's it for this piece of lost media. I saw it floating around, so I just wanted to mention it here. I can't truly confirm whether Robert really made this, so take it with a grain of salt. It's just named after him and rumored to be created by him. Air, cruel version. Air is a Japanese visual novel, and so is Kanon. They're both created by the same developers, and they're nothing but romance visual novels. There appears to be some discourse online about there being a cruel version to both of these games. However, that discourse has basically been shut down by now. I don't have much to say about these two. Kanon and Air were released in 1999 and the year 2000. When these games came out, there was a group of displeased porn drawing circles and visual novel fans who were unhappy with the company and the games. Due to their edgy unhappiness, they took both Air and Kanon and then made them gory. They added gore as a sort of rebellion, and they added violence, etc. They just did what they wanted and made it as disturbing as they wanted to. They basically took the whole game and rewrote most parts for it. Thanks to these fans, Air and Kanon suddenly gained even more spotlight, as rumors about them having cruel versions started circulating on forums on the internet. Now, the story about Air having a cruel version is like a creepypasta. This is genuinely something fanon, and not even the screenshots that were posted online can convince me otherwise. It might even be a mod or something, but people didn't really care to look into it. The cruel version of Air has then been declared to be lost media since a ton of people got tired of it and said there is no real cruel version. But Kanon's cruel version has actually been found. If you know more about this, then please feel free to comment. I want to encourage everyone to share all the information they have on these games. Eden. Eden is a cancelled psychological horror game that was in development. It was sort of a tie-in or epilogue to the Antichrist movie. It was planned to release in 2010 for PC and Xbox, but sadly that didn't happen. Eden is based in the same universe as the Antichrist, but with a different plot, which starts with where the film ends. The player would have taken on the role of Willem Dafoe's character, who goes back to a lodge in the woods, which was also called Eden, to try to figure out the cause of all the violent events seen in the movie. In the game, players had to create their own profile at the start, answering a series of questions about their fears and making the adventure a very personal experience. Since the game knew what your fear was, it would implement it. An article about Eden reads the following. The game began with a short prologue about legal and emotional repercussions of Antichrist's events, and then tasked players with collecting clues in a mystery that slowly unfolds. The players unlock areas in and around the cabin. To succeed in Eden, players had to confront their personal phobias and explore the darkness in Eden's universe. This is one of those what could have been games, which had an amazing premise and the potential to disturb you on a very personal level. Unfortunately, due to financial troubles, it was cancelled and now remains a piece of lost media. Corpse Party 2. Corpse Party 2, Satsuki's Heart, is an abandoned game. Satsuki's Heart was originally meant to be a direct continuation of the first Corpse Party game. Now, the demo for this might have been reposted somewhere, but the whole game was never finished. It got scrapped. As we all know, due to this being Corpse Party, there are graphic depictions of blood and gore. If you haven't played Corpse Party or watched the anime, then you'll probably be pleasantly surprised. Satsuki's gameplay is more focused on being an RPG with battles and having to be careful about your resources. The tale, or the plot, is this. Satsuki receives a letter inviting her to an abandoned mansion in her community. She knows the letter to her friend, Yuka Mochida, and cautions that something is off, since one line of the sentence keeps ringing in her mind. At midnight, the coffin of your heart will open and be offered up, which gives her the creeps. Yuka tells her that once she enters the mansion, she will never come back out again. Masumi and Rina treat the letter like it's trash, saying it's trying to make a fool of them. They convince the others to join them as they explore the mansion, and that's basically how they end up in hell. The gameplay in Corpse Party 2 was said to be similar to Corpse Party's original game, and there are a few changes to the RPG, but it's nothing too bad. Schnel Online. It's hard to find any traces of Schnel. It has been considered lost media for a while, yet it's often a topic of discussion for videos covering creepy and disturbing games. Schnel is this obscure black and white game which got some attention like 4 to 6 years ago due to how weird it was, and someone on 4chan was talking about it. It gained some popularity because of its controversial rumors. Schnel Online is said to be a game from the dark web, allegedly used by terrorists. It's said to have inappropriate content which involves minors. Based on my understanding, no one really has the link for it. They found some other link for another game named Carcass and shared some screenshots of it, which have some lines, let's say, and they're rapey. And yeah, they're very clearly different, so I don't know why they're always lumped together. Also, Schnel is like a website which you can open offline, so it doesn't look like you can communicate with others through it if I'm being honest. There's not really a mystery. It appears to just have a lot of baseless rumors without any solid proof. Schnel is made up to look obscure on purpose, and then people decide to roll with it and start a conspiracy. Grezo 1. Grezo 1 was a high school project developed by a man named Nicola Pirro. Albeit just a game at the time, it was quickly banned at his school because of its content, and it was never released to the public. Grezo 1 was shunned for having too much information about his classmates, such as inside jokes which they could decipher, and as well as being offensive. Due to that, Grezo 1 is not available on the internet. There's not much information about it, and all we know is that it was offensive enough to be prohibited at a school, and since the developer never posted it online, it's lost media. Now, although his school banned his first game and he decided against sharing it to the internet, Nicola Pirro did create a second game, and considering how offensive Grezo 2 is, I can't help but be curious about what Grezo 1 was. Grezo 2 is a first-person shooter game released during the early 2010s. Grezo 2 is just basically a modification of the video game Doom, which I did previously mention. The blasphemous plot of the game basically follows a pagan farmer, Pirro, who's disgusted by Christianity and plans to kill Jesus Christ to somehow prevent the rise of religion. I don't know about that one, buddy. Don't forget that originally Jesus came back after a few days. Anyway, the gameplay requires the player to play levels by defeating enemies. Many well-known personalities of Italian culture appear in the game, as well as references to political and religious issues of the country. With its violent content and blasphemous themes, Grezo 2 faced a significant amount of criticism since people did not like its offensive and vulgar content. Literally, the beginning of the game is the player, Pirro, barging into his grandparents' silver wedding anniversary and murdering everyone there. Pirro then dies and gets thrown into the afterlife, and in the afterlife, Pirro has the option to even fight God. Continuing the absurdity, which I know offended more than just Christians and Italians, Pirro returns to Earth and creates a plan to kill Jesus Christ while he's still in the womb. He is reborn from the Virgin Mary, and the process causes her death. The new Pirro then mocks her by playing the same song that the three wise men once played, and that's basically it. Grezo 2 was heavily criticized by the media, and it has then been banned on big platforms like Twitch, and while this Doom mod may not be lost, it sure is restricted, depending on where you're from. Kids Learning Game, The Baby Keyboard. Starting off as a mystery titled Kids Learning Game on Reddit, a user described a seemingly lost game for kids which allegedly contained not safe for work images. The original poster said that the genre was a kids learning game with the age range of 1 to 6-year-olds. It was a point-and-click style with cartoon graphics. The timeline during which the game was estimated to be available was during the late 90s and early 2000s. The poster also describes one of the characters in the game being a dog with hanging ears who interacts with the user. The dog has big blue spots and human-colored skin, as well as a sidekick of some sort. OP doesn't remember much about it, and mostly remembers that his mother obtained the game from the flea market. Now, the game itself was a simple children's game, without there seemingly being a specific goal. The dog would give you some tasks and you would do them. There would be different subjects like math, grammar, and just logic in general. As to why OP is searching for it, he states the following. The reason why I search it is that I once got scared of something I found on the CD, either in the game as an Easter egg or some sort of file, and even my mother was shocked of it, something very not safe for work or not safe for life, so she broke all of those CDs and threw them away. I want to know what it was and if it actually is from the game or if a previous owner added that. A year later, the original poster finally made an update sharing that he found the name of the game, The Baby Keyboard. OP then mentions how he wants to check if there's really something on the CD and if he can buy a new one online. And with this, users in the comments got to work. One user provided a link to a channel which uploaded gameplays of the game. Moving on to the gameplay once more and what's available, the game is oddly strange in a sense that it looks innocent, yet it contains some objects which appear to resemble male private parts. The game also has pictures of tribe women, and there's a video of a woman bathing a baby in it. Also, the dog's name is Nax, and his companion is a frog named Oyo. Now, while I did find out who developed the software, I think it's still reasonable to question why they'd include media of a baby being bathed. I think that's wrong for many reasons. Aside from that, according to a simple online search, Nax and Oyo was an animated television series. Some other posts on Reddit which were searching for the same game also appear to have found it, but they don't mention anything disturbing about it. This only fuels my suspicions that if there really was any gore or anything that was disturbing enough to make OP's mom break the CD, then the CD must have been tampered with. Now, as insane as that sounds, you apparently can burn new files into the CD. Now, this depends on what kind of CD it is, and I know that it sounds kind of insane, but considering that the game was obtained from the flea market, I wouldn't be too surprised if some people with bad intentions might have messed with it. Now, my personal conspiracy about the CD being tampered with aside, I decided to shoot the OP a message, but unfortunately didn't get a response. I waited for a couple of days, yet didn't hear anything back. So I think my little theory on the matter remains. Now, let's move on to games that aren't completely lost but are hard to find, either because of past controversies or because they're disturbing titles that few people know about. Fun. I managed to find Fun on one website with some digging. Fun was uploaded online by an indie developer who went by the username Nameless in 2013. And while it may look lost at first sight, it's really not. You just have to do a little bit of digging. Now, Fun gained some attention for being called worse than Sad Satan, but whether it really is worse or not is subjective. To some people, it isn't, but to some, it is. The opening of the game literally starts with a text that says, "This game was made by a demented person. It's not going to help you. Be careful and have fun," which will later have you wondering just how deranged the developer could get. So, right from the start, you're basically alone in some hallway which is full of all kinds of perverse and immoral confessions, like how you want to essay girls at school, disgusting confessions of that sort, including your own mother. You're in a red hallway and all of the confessions appear as texts on your screen. Also, the dead mother will appear on screen looking like some weird, ugly, tall Smeagol from Lord of the Rings, but even more messed up creature, and then you have some more horrible options and lines of dialogue to choose from. And then the game asks if you're having fun. The game then proceeds to ask if you're a psycho and want to see something, but you don't really have a choice since you have two options, which are both yes. And if this all wasn't enough, the game also has a real photo of a decapitated woman in it. Real gore for shock value. The game is not scary, it's just really vile and disturbing, and I think it should be turned into lost media, which shouldn't really be sought after. Also, at the end of Fun, you literally have the offer to take a picture of yourself and send it to the email of the creator, I suppose, which is creepy, and I can't help but wonder how many people have actually done it. Play Club. Remember Rapeplay? Well, now I'm going to tell you about another game from the same company, since they appear to have a thing for producing games with disturbing themes. Now, Illusion, the company, shut down in just 2023, and they ceased all operations, which means they are no longer producing games or selling copies. A new company named Ill Games emerged shortly after, but they stated that they are not a successor to Illusion, and they don't sell any of their games either. While Illusion had a ton of disgusting games with vile themes, right now I'm going to bring your attention to one of them, which was named Play Club. Play Club's primary theme is SA, much to no one's surprise. I also think that this is like their third game where the primary theme is just that. The first one was Biko, then Rapeplay. It's quite surprising how this didn't gain as much attention as the other two games, but there's honestly not much information about it either. The plot is it's about as bad as you'd expect it to be when you know who created it. In this game, you play the role of Kageyama Koji, who's a young boy searching for a job. In a nutshell, you were offered a job in a mansion, and the lady who gave you the offer is sick in the head, and she knows you're a sick pervert too. But yeah, it's quite disgusting. I think any game that helps someone live out and visualize a violent fantasy is terrible. There have been a bunch of pirating attempts made. Illusion's games are also illegal depending on where you're from, because certain countries do have restrictions. Considering that the company has shut down and there are no more copies being made, it's just restricted, illegally sold online depending on where you live. Custer's Revenge. Custer's Revenge is a racist adult game that involves the act of SA. The game was not banned, but it was restricted. Copies of it, which are all still sold online, range anywhere from $14 to $300. Some prints are circulating online for that $300 minimum, but they're illegal in a bunch of cities, not officially banned in the US. The player's character is based on Lieutenant Colonel and Major General George Armstrong Custer, who was a famous American cavalry commander. In the game, the player can control a nude General Custer. The whole point of the game is to SA. So, while the player is General Custer, you have to avoid narrows as you advance towards a native woman. Let's talk about some of the controversies. The National Organization of Women, which is a women's rights group, heavily criticized this game for obvious reasons. They called out the blatant sexism and racism. They were disgusted by the company and how they were so open about posting a game that portrays violence against women so easily. Unsurprisingly, the game was also hated by Native Americans. They protested it, and rightfully so. The game got a ton of heat, and although it wasn't banned, it was restricted. By today, Custer's revenge is mostly forgotten though, and it mostly appears in videos like these, which talk about its disgusting plot.